Alright guys, what is happening? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Simo and this is Ironclad Motorsport. So the purpose for today's video is basically because I've had quite a few people message me and say, haven't seen the Escort on the channel in a while, you haven't posted anything about it on your Instagram or TikTok or even your Facebook page. Do you still have it? And where is it now? So you guys know that the Escort did live in the garage next to the Fiesta, in basically the empty space that you can see behind me right now. So I guess that can only really mean one thing. The car is on the driveway in the sun, waiting to do a little bit of a video for you today on the car and how it is right now. Sorry if you thought I had sold it. I will not be selling this car. And you can see why. It is an absolute gem. I'm the fourth owner of this car. It's currently sitting at 80,000 miles. I've got full history with it all the way from the UK. I've got the old MOTs. I've even got the original V5 document from the original owner that bought it from Ford. Incredible, absolutely incredible, guys. Cost me around about $40,000 to get this car into Australia. So buy it in the UK, ship it over, insure it to be shipped, complied and all that kind of stuff in the UK, in Australia after it landed here. But I would say it is definitely worth it. As far as the inside of the car goes, there is a little bit of wear and tear on it, as you'd expect. It does have the droop in the armrest there where people have been leaning their elbow, but over the case of like 30 something years, that's to be expected. And it still has the standard Recaro interior. So as you can see, this one does have a 90 spec interior, but it is actually an 88 spec car, and the reason for that is because they actually changed the interior fabric over before they changed things like the spoiler. Still has the standard RS Turbo steering wheel, which was the same as the XR3i's. Unfortunately, I would like to get that changed at one point. Have a boost gauge and a temperature gauge in there, only because the temperature gauge in the car, that one up there, wasn't really working too well. So I have put an aftermarket temperature gauge in there and replaced the boost gauge so it actually matches. Very, very clean. So under the bonnet is no different to the rest of the car. It is extremely clean. When I did get the car, it looked like the image in the bottom left hand of the screen right now. What I did do is I removed the crossover, the throttle body and the intake manifold, replaced all the gaskets in there, painted them, cleaned them up really nice. And I got these Roos Motorsport pipes, got the connector pipe here, the top pipe with the dump valve attachment, got the turbo to metering unit, intake hose, and then obviously the bottom intercooler hose down there, all the way down, this being the top intercooler hose. Chrome polished alloy heat shield was already on it when I got it. I have changed the spark plugs since I have got it. They were actually the wrong plugs that are in there. Coolant level's nice. There was a little bit of a rust bubble on this here, so I cleaned that off, took everything out, cleaned it off, painted that up nice, and put a new fuel filter in when I replaced the fuel tank. And of course the custom K&N induction kit, because we're not going to shove one there because there's no way to put a heat shield around it, and that's going to run terribly hot. Plus it's law in Australia that it has to be shielded. The filter has to be shielded from the rest of the engine bay, something to do with the old carburetor fed cars. So I just let the car warm up a little bit before we actually go anywhere. But like I said, the car's sitting on 80,244.5 miles at the moment. It's kind of like scrolled halfway between the 4 and the 5 there. If you guys remember the old 80s, 90s kind of analog dials scrolling along. So that means I've done 2,000 miles in the car since I got it here in Australia. I bought the car with 78,000 miles. And of course, as I said, I am the 4th owner of this car, which I think is pretty cool considering. So that's good. We are warm, ready to go. So I have actually removed the auxiliary air slide, which is the cold start for this car. And the reason I did that is because it was leaking. And I'm in Australia, so I didn't really need it. But I have noticed since I came, well, since, you know, like the seasons have changed to being in the winter time. Oh, I love this car. Since it has changed to being now in the winter time here in Australia, so it's around about 19, 20 degrees instead of like 39, 40 degrees. Because the cold start injector is still plugged in, it is still pushing fuel in to help it fire off. But because I've removed the auxiliary air slide, there's not enough air. So there is a slight misfire when it's cold, which I believe is just the overfueling. And you can see that on the floor in my garage, because there's a little bit of black on the floor in my garage when I start it up. And it only happens when the car is cold. So it's just a little bit of overfueling on the cold start there. So to fix that, well, in all fairness, I'm probably just going to unplug the cold start injector. So the engine is currently running standard power. It does have the induction kit on it, and it has a full Scorpion exhaust system. But we're running standard boost at the moment because it's still on the MFI, the mechanical fuel injection setup. I would like to change it to EFI at a later date, but it's difficult trying to source the parts here in Australia to convert it to EFI. There are people in the UK that can supply those parts for me, and I have contacted them, but I'll be quite honest with you, they haven't really been incredibly helpful. So, love that sound. If you are watching this video and you have a whole pile of EFI parts in the UK and you fancy sending them out here to Australia for me, shoot me a message or comment on the video below with your Instagram name. I'll get in contact with you and hopefully we can work out some kind of deal. All right, so guys, let's be honest, it's a 34-year-old car. Let's talk about the problems that I've had with it since I bought it, all right? Because it are 34 years old. They weren't known for being the most reliable car back in the day either, but hey, it is what it is. So the first thing was, as you guys know, the fuel tank had a leak in it when I first got it. Whether that happened in transit or not, I don't know. I kind of think it might have done. I'm not too sure, but there was a repair job on the fuel tank previously. However, again, it's a 34-year-old car that's been in the UK for a long time. You're going to expect something to not work properly. So I got a new fuel tank, got that shipped over. That took around about 2 weeks, which was fine. Got it running. Everything was great. Was running for a little bit, and then I wasn't really hitting much boost. I was like, to start with, I was getting around about 6 or 7 pounds, and then it only started boosting to about, you know, like 4 pounds. And I was like, oh, you know, that's not normal. So I just looked at all the vacuum pipes on the ammo valve, and it turns out that there was a split in one of those. So I changed the vacuum pipes on the amel valve, fitted the intake filter, the Roost Motorsport pipes, and the blow-off valve, along with the new boost gauges and all that kind of stuff. And the car is heaps more lively, boosting back at around about 6 to 7 pounds again. And as you can hear, the dump valve sounds awesome. Aside from that, I really haven't had any problems with the car. Oh, actually no, the starter motor did pack out as well. And that's again very common with these cars because the starter motor is a fairly big unit for no reason whatsoever, and it sits very, very close to the turbocharger. So as you can imagine, with the turbo getting super hot and the starter motor heating up, it is literally just going to cook it. And it did. It cooked it. The solenoid died. The motor was still good. The solenoid died, but I needed to get a new one. So off to eBay I went, and I found a starter motor for a Ford Transit Connect, the 1.8 diesel. Bought that. It arrived in around about a week and a half, which was pretty good. I was happy with that, and fitted that, and we're pretty much here we are today now with the car. The car does run hot, as you'd expect it to here in Australia. I'm regularly seeing temps of around about 98 to 100 degrees on the temperature gauge. But when I drive it in the winter months, oh, that sound is amazing. When I drive it in the winter months here in Australia, the temperature does normally sit around about 90 to 92 on my temp gauge, but it is really in the summer that it does run very hot. So I will be looking at upgrading the cooling system. I will be looking at a bigger intercooler and a bigger radiator and a more powerful fan to put on it as well. But aside from that, with the combination of EFI and then potentially going a standalone ECU instead of like Fiesta RS Turbo management or Cosworth management, that's pretty much how the car's gonna sit, you know? I don't really want to gut it and put a cage in it and some bucket seats and all that kind of stuff, because, well, as much as I would have done that back in the day, I really like the Recaro interior. Well guys, that is that from today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. A little bit of an update of my Series 2 1989 Ford Escort RS Turbo. There's only 9 of these cars in Australia, and mine is one of them, so I'm pretty lucky. It's a very special car over here, and it turns some heads and puts big smiles on people's faces all the time. Guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch up with you in the next video.